Oh, it's the Security Weekly News, and it's episode 424. Wow, lots of even numbers there. What does that add up to? 10? Ooh, it's an A in hex. I guess that's a good sign. I'm taking it as an omen. Anyway, I'm Doug White, and it's the Security Weekly News, and welcome to the week of October 2024. We got Doom running on a human brain, maybe, E2EE, OT, Adload, Cisco, VMware, Internet Archive, Josh Marpet, and more on the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News.
ThreatLocker implements a least privileged approach to cybersecurity, blocking every executable unless specifically authorized by your team. This methodology mitigates ransomware, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits, and ensures 24/7, 365 and a quarter protection for your organization. To learn more about how ThreatLocker can help prevent known and unknown threats in your digital environment, safeguard your data and operations from threat actors, and align your organization with respective compliance frameworks, visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker.
All right. From exile on the island of Elba, we are back, and it is the Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White. Welcome to the show. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment on your favorite platform. Because do you know what it costs to feed snakes? It's a lot. A lot. More than you think. Yeah. But yeah. All right. A number of end-to-end encrypted cloud storage platforms, which are called E2Es, are apparently vulnerable to security issues, which would mean that your data there could be exposed. An analysis from ETH Zurich, which is pretty well known, found stacks of issues with the following: Sync, pCloud, IceDrive, cFile, and Tresorit. Now, I wasn't familiar with all those, but a lot of the things that they found with these were around poor encryption, no encryption, all kind. I mean, they found a huge list of things with all these different services, and these particular services claim to have around 22 million users, which, I mean, is that a lot? I don't know. But anyway, the analysis was based on a threat model that they put together, which assumed that an attacker could control a malicious server that could read, modify, and inject data at will. Okay. I mean, initially I read that, I was like, that sounds really hard. But then I was like, well, no, because you could just get an account, right? And apparently it is reflective of nation states' abilities. And of course, high-end attackers can do this as well. The vendors were notified in September. And of course, the letter that was sent to them encouraged them to improve their crypto and all these other problems. I guess the response was not what they were hoping for. IceDrive basically said no. cFile said they would try to patch in a future upgrade, and Sync and pCloud did not respond as of the 10th of October. But then the journalist who wrote this article basically said that of all of them, Sync was the only one, and Sync said that they were made aware of issues last week and that they had taken, quote, swift action to address them. Yeah. So like I always tell everyone, there's lies, damned lies, and marketing. I know what the original was something else, but you really, I mean, when you start using cloud-based storage, one of the things I think you're going to have to be careful about is if you read the marketing literature, everything is amazing. Everything is excellent. Everything has AI. But when you actually go through this, you might want to evaluate the encryption, evaluate, some of the, because your day's putting your data on somebody else's server somewhere else, and you don't really know what's there. So be careful out there. Well, the manufacturing sector is reaching record high numbers of attacks, according to research based on by KnowBe4. Per the report, attacks against manufacturing companies account for 25.7% of all reported cyber attacks this year, which is up from 24.8% last year. So not a huge increase, but nevertheless, it's still the largest group. Finance and insurance companies were the second most common target at 18.2%, followed by professional, business, and consumer services at 15.4%. So according to KnowBe4, apparently one of the reasons that manufacturing is such a heavy target, I have my own opinion, but they said that this sector seems to be more likely to pay a ransom. Okay, well, that'll do it. If every time you go to rob somebody down at the ATM, they've got a shotgun and a pit bull, you may tend to go to a different ATM. But on the other hand, if every time you go down there, they just hand you the cash, well, that tends to encourage crime. Um, I guess part of it, the reason they pay the ransoms is because they have contractual obligations and they have to get back in business. And if the deliveries aren't coming in, it causes all kinds of problems. In my opinion, they're a big target because with all their SCADA and ICS and all these obscure things, they used to not be much of a target because their attitude was we have all these weird, obscure things that nobody knows how they work and they can't get to them anyway. But now they've started adding IoT devices. They've got Wi-Fi down in the sawmill. They got streaming video in the pulping room. They've got workers walking around with iPads and all kinds of things. And suddenly those obscure OT networks that were out there are, accessible. And, likewise during the pandemic, a lot of operators were having to work from home. So, so they wanted the sawmill to keep running. So they sent the operator of the nuclear plant, and they may have had to quickly arrange for connections to their HMI machines. And that's the human machine interface component. And a lot of times they didn't do that in the best possible ways. So it's definitely, if you're in manufacturing, I would definitely take note that you are a big target. Microsoft Threat Intelligence on October 17th warned that Microsoft Defender for Endpoint detected Adload malware and it was exploiting a previously patched version of Mac OS. The vulnerability is called HMSurf, and basically what it can do is it allows attackers the ability to bypass the transparency, consent, and control, or TCC components of Safari. So this is sort of how they isolate operations that are going on in the browser. And if they can break out of that browser directory tree structure, they can basically access pretty much anything on the system, which means they can write, bad drivers. They can do all kinds of different attacks. So now apparently Apple released a fix for this problem back in September with the security updates. But what they found was, as ever, people don't patch. And so if you are one of those kind of people that's always going, Macs there's no virus targeting Macs or whatever, but that's not true. Microsoft Threat Intel said that there is active exploitation of this going on right now. So they're advising you to get this patched. They did say that if you have behavioral detection in use, it should probably block this type of attack. But, anytime you start using excuses, saying, well, we don't need a patch, we've got this, you're just asking for it. And so, yes, Virginia, even Macs can get compromised. Well, Cisco confirmed on Friday that some files had been stolen. Now, all this is still very unclear in my opinion, but basically Cisco said yes after it got proven, some files got stolen. And the reason that it was proven was Intel brokers started offering to sell information from various systems on a cybercrime site. So Intel broker announced a Cisco breach on the 14th of October. So last week, this came up. And Intel broker, who's a well-known, targets major companies with hacking and break-ins and exfiltrations, claimed to have obtained GitHub and SonarQube projects, source code, hard-coded credentials, certifications, confidential documents, Jira tickets, API tokens, AWS private buckets, encryption keys, the keys to the executive washroom, and Chuck Robbins's hat size. I'm like, was there anything left that you don't claim to have? In addition, Intel broker claimed to have source code from other major companies such as Microsoft, AT&T, Verizon, Chevron, BT, SAP, T-Mobile, Bank of America, and then published some screenshots that showed access to various management interfaces being used, internal documents, slideshows, source code, databases of customer information, all sorts of goodies. Cisco said that the investigation is ongoing, but as of Friday, they said its own systems were not breached. But apparently, Intel broker got the data from a public-facing DevHub environment. Now, if you don't know what DevHub is, it's a content management and marketing solution that a lot of big companies use. Cisco said that the compromised environment was a resource center that was used to make available source code, scripts, and other content that they're giving to to paying customers. So this is one of those private, public sites. They went on and said a small number of files that were not authorized for public download may have been published, but they have not seen any confidential information or sensitive PII or financial data being disclosed. So this whole story then becomes kind of like, is Cisco not telling the whole story under the guise of we're still investigating? Is Intel broker lying? I mean, hard to imagine, that somebody could be lying for their own gain. Some combination of the two. So it's probably in my opinion, it's probably the case that Cisco doesn't really know yet exactly what was taken and how much was taken. So, are these, management interface pictures and things real? I'm sure we'll find out soon. VMware seems to be having a lot of trouble, and a lot of stories start with that lately, right? It's like after they got bought by Broadcom, it's just sort of like, yeah. But this one is about a nasty code execution flaw in the vCenter server platform. Now, this is the second time in a couple of months that VMware has had a patch pushed out to cover a remote code execution involving vCenter server. Now, these two particular exploits were documented and exploited at a Chinese hacking contest earlier this year. This statement was released by VMware, quote, VMware by Broadcom, you have to say that now, VMware by Broadcom has determined that the vCenter patches released on September 17th did not fully address the issue. No additional details were provided. There will be no questions, no lunch. Good afternoon. The vulnerability is a heap overflow in the distributed computing environment remote procedure call protocol, which is implemented within vCenter server and has a CVSS score of 9.8. And an attacker who can access your vCenter server via the network may be able to trigger this vulnerability. And since, vCenter is sort of the way you access everything in your whole, VMware environment, they probably have access to it. So it's probably a big problem. I don't have to worry about this because Broadcom sent me a nasty letter that said they were canceling all their academic programs. Thank you so much and good day. And so we had to switch to Proxmox, which hasn't been bad. And I didn't have to have a spare $160,000 a year laying around to pay for full commercial licenses. Thanks, Broadcom. You're such a, yeah. Anyway, guess they won't be sponsoring my show anytime soon. But I'll probably get told, they're probably already signaling me like, no, Broadcom just signed up. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Anyway, the exploits were disclosed by research teams at the 2024 Matrix Cup, which is a Chinese-based hacking contest that was held back in June. The Matrix Cup is sponsored by Qihu 360 in Beijing, Huiyuan Information Technology. Yeah, I didn't say that one very well. I think it should be Qihu Sanliuling. Yeah, not 360, but what do I know? Just a few days ago, the Internet Archive said it was getting back in action after a breach and a distributed denial of service attack forced the library offline. But yesterday, further attacks caused all new problems. They're just having a rough couple of weeks. An unknown attacker has now claimed access tokens for their Zendesk implementation and used the tokens to send a mass email on the 20th of October to anyone who tried to interact with the platform. The email basically said, and this really rang a bell with me. It said, quote, "It was disappointing to see that despite being made aware of the breach 2 weeks ago, the Internet Archive has still not done their due diligence and rotated their API keys that were exposed." And the email then included a Zendesk token that has permission to access 800,000 support tickets that had been sent to info@archive.org since 2018. It went on and said, quote, "Whether you were trying to ask a general question or requesting the removal of your site from the Wayback Machine, your data is now in the hands of some random guy. If not me, it'd be someone else. We own all your bases now." Internet Archive has not responded to this, by the way. And I just thought this was very old school kind of stuff. I really remember doing that kind of stuff. Where you send a print, you send a raw print job to the central main printer in the bank that says, You guys realize your main server's password is Big Daddy Gandalf, right? I mean, I just logged in and transferred 2 cents from your CEO's account to your CFO's account and then transferred it back this morning. The charges are all called Big Daddy Gandalf. Just to let you know, trying to be a good guy here, and then you get a letter from their from their lawyers going like, you will be sued in court for this horrible. I mean, this is illegal now. You can't even do this, but it really sounded old school to me. You know, I know, you might want to fix all those problems, and then 2 weeks later, you transfer $10 million into your account in the Bahamas, and you're now drinking mojitos in a Speedo with Hannibal Lecter on a beach somewhere and talking about the good old days. Wait, did I say that part out loud? Anyway, forget you heard that. But the site's apparently back up today in read-only mode. So I did see a story after I was looking at the original article. I saw another story saying they were back online, but only in read-only mode. So hang in there, Internet Archive. This other story is not really a cybersecurity thing, and I often try to do other stuff here, but this one's a scam in India, and I haven't seen this being done in the United States or Europe, but it's certainly possible, and doing it online is definitely possible. So it's sort of more of a warning about things to be aware of. So basically, in this case, it was the plot of the movie The Sting, if you've ever seen that really old movie, but it's a physical scam. So the ripoff was that these people set up a fake office that looked like a bank, complete with furniture and posters and desks and all this kind of stuff. And they said it was a branch of the State Bank of India, which is this major concern. I mean, this is like a major league bank that everybody's familiar with. Then they put on an ad that they were interested in hiring people to staff this branch office. So, so I was going, okay, what's the scam? Like, how are they scamming you? They hire you and you go to work in a fake office. Like, what's the scam? Well, part of this was me being U.S. centric, I guess, but I live in Rhode Island, so you'll get it in a second. And if you live in Louisiana or somewhere, you probably get it too. But these people were really hard up for jobs. They have a lot of unemployment in India, and they basically paid bribes to various people to get the jobs. So they were basically told, oh, you want a job? Yeah, you have to pay me a bribe. And of course it looked legit. So the people, they went to an interview and then they basically paid a bribe. And it was really just a ripoff to get their bribe money. Now, but before you say, oh, this is just something that happened in India, take the word bribe out of the equation and change that word to fee. And then run it on LinkedIn or some other site. And suddenly it's a pretty major scam, right? So, I mean, we've often cautioned you about checking up on the people you're trying to hire. But if you are applying for jobs, and I know some of you are, I talked to somebody last night that was applying for a job. And if you are, really keep your paranoia hat on, I'm telling you. And watch for things like, the very scammy kinds of things where you apply for the job and then I had one of these not too long ago, and they immediately came back to me and said, well, you're going to need to pay a finder's fee for us to forward your resume to the job. And I said, oh, I thought the resume went to the job already. And they were like, no, we're just a third party that's recruiting and we're going to need a finder's. And I was like, thank you. Have a nice day. You can delete my resume now. I'm sure they sold my resume to the Russians or something. But watch for that kind of stuff. I usually, what I do is anytime I'm suspicious, I call the company directly. I actually had done that in this case, and they did have a job. I didn't use the ad info. I looked up the company, looked up their HR department, and called them and asked about the position to make sure it was real. Sometimes they'll help you, sometimes they won't. If they won't help you, you probably don't want to work there anyway. But be paranoid, really. I mean, it's not paranoia if they're out to get you. Charm is a scheme for making strangers like and trust a person immediately, no matter what the charmer has in mind. Josh Marpet can have oodles of charm when he wants to. Hi, Josh.
Once in a while, but I don't have enough charm to open up an entire fake bank branch. Dear God.
Oh, come on. We could do that.
And I'll be honest, I've seen places where applying to get an apartment is a $400 application fee, where there's applying to get a job. There's your the background check stuff, and a lot of companies eat those costs. But some companies, especially in the more scammy side of the world, which by the way includes the U.S.
You mean Boston, right? Yeah,
Boston, Rhode Island. I don't know. Just saying.
I mean, let me tell you, they do this thing with apartments in Boston, and what they do is they list an apartment, and then you show up, and the landlord, this guy meets you and says, "I'm going to need a fee to show you the apartment," and you pay them the fee, and then they turn you down for the apartment. Or worse, you pay the fee online, and when you show up to the apartment I saw this story. They had there was 4 or 5 people showing up all at the same time for this apartment they had all supposedly rented from somebody, and the people that live in the apartment are going, "What? No,
Well,
I don't know who you talked to, but you didn't rent this apartment."
And the
We've been
squatters
living here.
problems in this country. I mean, there's people that fake a lease and are like, well, I leased it. And the owner's like, I was renovating it for my use. You didn't lease squat. It's a whole, like, there's a lot of problems there.
Ooh.
But anyway,
I've thought a lot about squatting. I think I'd be good at it. It was
well,
when
the person who cleans your bathroom would really prefer you did that. But anyway, so
hey, when I took that exam in high school for what you should do as a career, squatting was like up on my list.
I'm terrified that your high school had that as a potential occupation. But anyway, let's get on to it.
Okay.
So I put a link in for a discussion about from the CSA, the Cloud Security Alliance, about their AI ethics and core security responsibilities. And so it's fascinating. This is effectively to the groups of people that are building generative AI models. And how do you protect the AI models from ethical issues, from bad data, from turning out bad answers, as well as protecting it against attacks? And so they put out an entire presentation and a paper on this, which is actually pretty good. It focuses on data security, privacy protection, model security, vuln management, and governance and compliance. You're like, okay, that's cool. That's great. But there's only one minor problem. Every time a country puts out a mandatory regulatory framework for generative AI work, do you know what happens? All the generative AI creators just up and leave the country. But would that happen here in America? Yeah, of course. If the government gets too scared that generative AI is going to do bad things, whatever that is, that's privacy invasion, that's influence people away from government, whatever, how do they do something? They put a regulation on it. And if they take this and put a regulatory framework, as well-intentioned as this framework is, as well thought out as this framework is, as good as this framework is, what's going to happen? I don't know. But one of the possibilities is that if this becomes a regulatory framework, law, effectively, you must do this to make Gen AIs in this country, are they going to up and leave? Well, so what needs to happen is that these kinds of regulatory frameworks need to merge, just as we have now, I think it's 50 state data breach notification laws, and we really need a federal data breach notification law so we don't have to keep track of all 50 of the suckers, okay? We need an international AI ethics, responsibility, bill of materials, the whole 9 yards. Okay. We need international for everybody to say, this is what you have to do Gen AI. Why? I mean, Josh, what's the big deal? Gen AI is just hype. It's just like cryptocurrency. It's so cute and it's lots of money. And then there's 5 people doing it and scamming everybody else. No, Gen AI is actually a real thing that, yeah, there's a lot of hype. Don't get me wrong. I'm not denying this hype, but it is being used right now in significant business functions to perform a lot of repetitive business processes. So if you have a business process that's well documented and flow charted, has its decision points well written out, can Gen AI do that? Yes, of course it can. That's kind of the point. If it's something that doesn't require human judgment, it can do that. And if you're not following these things, these guidelines that they've laid out, and it's free to download. It's from the Cloud Security Alliance. It's a really, really nice framework. I got to give them a lot of credit. They did a great job on it. But if you're not following this, you're risking people's protection, just like those storage vendors are risking people's protection when they screw up their cryptography by using unauthenticated. Oh my God! Don't even get me started. Anyway, so we need to do these things, but we need to have an international effort to do these things properly. Otherwise, we're going to have some scammy scumbags from wherever doing Gen AI that's just going to steal people's information, just as if it was a fake bank branch stealing people's job application bribes and fees. Okay. So our goal here should be, let's have an international regulatory schema, whether it's mandatory or voluntary, but something you can state, hey, look, I do this. I'm following this. And to show you that my AI is actually ethical, responsible, respects people's privacy, has vuln management, is secure, I've got good inventories, etc. Wouldn't that be nice? I think so, but I'm a bit weird on the matter, because I'm a big fan of doing regulation properly and making security and compliance revenue drivers, not cost centers. But again, I'm weird. Doug, are you weird? I think, well, Doug's definitely weird.
No,
We don't
I'm
even ask him
the
about
most
that.
normal person you've ever met, actually. No, I'm a huge fan of. I mean, I've thought, why aren't they certifying these things? You know, like if you had if you want to use, for instance, I mean, I was using ChatGPT to do something I really hate doing, which was formatting a paper.
Oh yeah, it's great for
And
that.
yeah, it's great for that. It's like, hey, ChatGPT, can you put this in APA format and take care of it all? And and it's really great for that. But at the same time, if that paper had been something I was concerned about it getting out there, I would probably be a little worried about putting it in. And
Yeah.
it'd be nice if they had certifications of the behavior of these things and so forth, so that you could feel like, well, I can at least somewhat trust this one, but this one over here is pretty sketchy. And I don't like suppressing things.
Right.
But
But
at the same
guiding them.
yeah. I mean, so if you can try to help push this towards ethics and so forth, it would be a good idea, because people are going to get in a lot of trouble with this stuff really soon.
So the
Already
Cloud
are.
Security Alliance is doing this paper, which again is a fantastic AI risk management and ethical and responsibility framework. Helen Oakley is doing an AI bill of materials regulation. So like, there's a lot of things going on that are fantastic for this. We just need to make them move forward and get them internationally accredited, get them certifiable, so you can certify to them, and then it's a revenue driver.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's a great idea. Thank you, Josh. And finally, speaking of all these kind of crazy things, I love science, and I'm a big believer of breaking things and finding out. I think that's how we move forward. If you never take that washing machine apart and can't put it back together, and your dad grounds you for 2 weeks, you'll never. Well, actually, I never did get it to work again, but we got a new washing machine. But I mean, and I would definitely drink the glowing liquid to see if I got superpowers. Although I'd probably just get like a forehead or forearm growing out of the top of my head or something. But I would, and but some stuff does sound scary to me, and that's okay. Scary's good sometimes. If nobody ever did anything scary, if Oppenheimer hadn't gone up there and said, I know some people think this will destroy the whole earth, but let's test it anyway. What the hell, And then, with some quote from the Bhagavad Gita, it's like, I am become death. I'm like, how pretentious is that, Oppenheimer, really? But I mean, it's still Scary's okay. So I mean, sometimes you get Terminators or a pesky rash, but that's the price of science, right? So anyway, so Final Spark, which has an ominous sounding name, right? Final Spark, is a Swiss startup that allows you to use. This thing, this whole article got my attention. It lets you use a neural platform so that researchers who are interested in biocomputing can write code. So this is probably why it got grabbed and put in my file, because it had talk about writing code. And biocomputing is about writing code for biological computers. And then they said, you can write code that interacts with brain organoids. And I was like, organoids. Okay, I don't know what that means. So then I spent 2 hours reading about brain organoids. But a brain organoid, if you don't know what it is a mini biological brain. They grew it with stem cells. So they grow brain cells in a petri dish and make a mini brain. I mean, yeah, I mean, so these are like simple biological components which respond to stimuli via a multi-electrode array that allows for people to communicate with them. So the stories about getting these brain organoids to respond to stimuli using decision-making code in Python, which I was like, it's just sort of like, let's bring it all back down to earth. It's in Python. But the Python code is not making the decision. So it's not, traditional structured programming. It's actually it's just the guidance code. The brain organoids actually get triggered by response to stimuli. And what they were testing was, could you get a butterfly to fly? I presume it was a real butterfly. So they want the butterfly to fly towards one or the other stimuli, not based on code that says go left or right. If these, it was like, you need to go left or right, but you decide. That's the scary part. So much like, a human might choose ice cream over pizza when walking down the boardwalk on a sunny day in 1951. But the headline is, butterfly controlled by lab-grown human mini brain remotely connected to the internet, which sounds like, is this the New York Post? Wolf Boy and Subway. But I was like, what? Wait, really? Butterfly controlled by lab-grown mini human brain remotely connected to the internet. What could go wrong with that? So, don't create the torment nexus kind of thing. Yeah. See, look what I used a meme. But really, it's a really cool story, though, if you're interested in such things. I mean, if you could learn to control things with biocomputing, pretty soon somebody's going to be able to run Doom on your brain. You'll see it. You watch. And that's the news. Thank you, Josh. And I will see you next time on the Security Weekly News.